What if your life isn't what you chose, but what you were told to choose? What if the dreams you chase, the pain you carry, the identity you wear, were never really yours, but scripts whispered into your subconscious before you could speak? There's a strange ache that follows you, a quiet hum beneath the surface of everything. It doesn't scream, it doesn't interrupt, it just lingers. That feeling that something about your life was assigned. That you've been repeating stories that don't feel like home. You try to fix it, you try to grow, you meditate, journal, align your chakras, read the books, but no matter what you do, it still feels like you're living someone else's blueprint. Like the life you have was chosen for you, because maybe it was. Maybe you didn't choose this life. Maybe they made you think you did. And if that's true, if you were handed a story and told to call it freedom, what else have they made you believe? What else was installed, disguised as desire? This isn't about blame. It's about recognition, because once you see the story, you no longer have to follow the script. The emotional recycling loop, why the same lessons keep returning. You ever feel like you're stuck in some kind of cosmic rerun? Different people, different places, same damn pain, like you've been here before. Not just once, but 100 times. Like your heart knows the ending before the story even starts. You think it's bad luck, karma, a test. Maybe a lesson you haven't quite learned, but what if it's not a lesson? What if it's a trap? What if you're not evolving through these cycles, just orbiting the same emotional loop, dressed up in different skin? See, the system doesn't want your freedom. It wants your energy, your repetition, your return. So it crafts these patterns, heartbreak that looks like healing, challenges that look like growth, but always keep you spinning. It feels like you're changing, like you're getting somewhere. But every loop is just a slightly more sophisticated version of the last. And it's not because you failed, it's because you were programmed to come back. Pain isn't your enemy, it's your code, the access point they use to pull you in, again and again. They use your guilt, your empathy. You need to fix what was never broken, and they tell you, you're almost there, just one more life, just one more lesson. But what if there is no next time? What if this is the moment the loop breaks? Because the loop isn't real. It's recycled emotion, repackaged struggle, and it ends the second you remember that not all pain is sacred. Some of it is engineered. The illusion of soul contracts, agreements that weren't truly yours. They say you chose this. That your soul made sacred contracts before it came here, that everything you experience, every person you meet, every heartbreak you endure, was pre-agreed. That sounds divine, noble, empowering, until it doesn't. Until you realize that calling it a contract doesn't make it consent, because real consent requires clarity, and you came here blind, stripped of memory, washed of context, pulled through a veil that made you forget the very terms of what you supposedly signed. So let's ask the forbidden question. What if you didn't agree? What if those contracts were shown to you in a fractured state, when your energy was raw, your awareness scattered, your soul still shaking from the last lifetime? What if they told you it was your responsibility, not because it was true, but because it was useful? Useful to a system that feeds on repetition, on souls who feel indebted, on beings who keep coming back to make things right, even when the wrong was never theirs. This isn't growth, it's guilt, disguised as spiritual duty. Because if they can convince you it was all your idea, you'll never question the pain. You'll carry it like a cross. You'll return like a soldier, and you'll thank them for the privilege of suffering. But not anymore. The illusion cracks when you remember this. You are not obligated to carry what you don't remember choosing. You are not bound by contracts written in confusion and fear. You are not here to repay a debt you never truly owed. Reincarnation or reprogramming, the truth about returning. They call it reincarnation, like it's sacred, like it's a soul's journey back to school, back to earth, back to the body. But what if it's not reincarnation? What if it's reprogramming? What if the soul doesn't return because it wants to, but because it's been trained to? See, between lives, there's a pause, a soft reset. And in that pause, your soul is vulnerable, wide open. Stripped of defenses, just light, confused, weightless longing. And that's when the suggestions come. You have more to learn. You still have karma to balance. Your mission isn't complete. And because you don't remember, you believe them. They show you flashes of pain, of people you hurt, of things undone, and say, it's your turn now. But they don't show you the full picture. They don't show you how much was planted, twisted, edited. They don't show you the manipulation behind the mission. And so you agree, not because you're free, but because you're confused. That's not a conscious return. That's a re-entry under false pretenses. It's not a sacred cycle. It's a loop of consent given in amnesia. And the more you come back, the easier it gets for them. Because each return creates more attachment, more entanglement, more guilt. They don't need to trap you. They just need you to believe you belong here. But maybe now you're starting to remember that you don't. Karma as currency, how guilt keeps you in the cycle. Karma sounds noble, a cosmic justice system, a spiritual ledger. Do good, get good, do harm, make it right. But what if karma isn't justice? What if it's currency, a subtle economy of guilt, a vibrational debt system designed not to balance you, but to bind you? They say, you're here to clear karma. But clear whose? Do you remember what you did? Do you recall the choices, the actions, the lifetimes they say you must atone for? No, you don't, because you were stripped of memory. And without memory, guilt becomes programmable. They implant the feeling, not the fact. They teach you to carry the weight of mistakes you can't recall, from lives you don't recognize, for acts you never had context to understand. And so, you feel responsible. You tolerate pain. You accept struggle. You embrace lack, sickness, loss, all in the name of balance. But balance for whom? What if karma was never meant to be a punishment? What if it was just a natural flow, hijacked by systems that knew how to weaponize your empathy? Because once they convinced you that you're guilty, they didn't need to force you to stay. You volunteered, out of shame, out of duty, out of a longing to make it right. But here's the secret they never told you. Your guilt doesn't liberate you. It recharges the loop. And the moment you stop carrying shame for what you can't remember, the cycle begins to crack. Not because you fought, but because you stopped paying. A case that broke the loop. When one soul said, no more. Not every soul returns. There are stories, quiet, buried, nearly forgotten, of souls who woke up between lives. Souls who stood at the threshold and refused to step through again, not in anger, not in defiance, but in clarity. One soul in one such case didn't argue, didn't rebel, it simply remembered. Amid the haze of transition, as guides recited the same lines, as contracts were presented again, as familiar faces urged a return, something inside said, "This isn't mine." And that single recognition unraveled everything, because when a soul remembers, it emits a frequency that cannot be manipulated. It's not louder, it's not forceful, it's just true. And truth, in its purest vibration, is incompatible with the loop. The system doesn't know what to do with a soul that no longer carries guilt, a soul that sees the game, a soul that doesn't need permission to stop playing. This soul didn't ascend. It didn't vanish into light. It stood still, present, whole, unmoved by the pull to return, untouched by the weight of false duty. And that stillness, that sacred refusal, broke the loop, not just for itself, but as a signal. A beacon for others, still wandering, still unsure, still trapped in roles they never chose, because one soul remembering makes it possible for others to feel the spark, and sparks spread. Sacred disobedience, the path back to true sovereignty. They taught you to obey, to be kind, to surrender, to trust the process, to align with love and light, even when your soul screamed in silence. But not all obedience is holy, and not all surrender is sacred. There comes a moment when your soul feels the friction, not from the outside, but from within. A quiet, steady resistance to playing small, to apologizing for your power, to performing for a system that never truly honored your essence. That moment is sacred, because that is when disobedience becomes divine, not loud, not chaotic, but clear. A refusal that doesn't seek to destroy, only to stop participating, because true sovereignty doesn't dominate. It simply no longer consents. You don't need to burn it all down. You don't need to fix the world or heal every wound or carry the weight of every contract. You only need to remember your center, and from that stillness, say no. No to guilt that wasn't yours. No to stories you didn't write. No to returning just because they said it was your lesson. This isn't rebellion from ego, it's restoration from soul, because sacred disobedience is how you reclaim your name, the one they tried to erase. The one that was never spoken aloud, but always echoed inside. You were never meant to obey your way into freedom. You were meant to remember your way out. This is not the end, a message for those who remember. If you made it here, maybe you never really forgot. Maybe you've always carried this quiet knowing that your pain didn't start with you, that your patterns weren't accidents, that your soul has been whispering beneath every lifetime, every lesson, every loop. Wake up. And now you are. Not because someone gave you permission, not because you reached enlightenment, but because something ancient inside you finally felt seen. You didn't choose this life. They made you think you did. But the lie only works when you keep living it. And now the script is unraveling. You are not broken. You're remembering. You are not lost. You're coming back to yourself. You are not late. You are right on time for your own return. So let the system tremble. Let the contracts burn. Let the false light dim. Because when one soul wakes up, it shakes the whole grid. Leave a comment. I remember. I choose to unplug. If this message stirred something deep in you, it's because you already knew. Not in your mind, in your bones, in your field, in your soul. This is not the end. It's a beginning you've always carried inside you, like a quiet drumbeat waiting to be heard. Subscribe if you feel this, not because you should, but because you're ready. Ready to listen, ready to feel, ready to meet yourself outside the loop. The next video, it's not just more content, it's a door, and maybe, just maybe, it's the one you've been walking toward for lifetimes. See you on the other side.